Shall we do some real-time parts work? Shit, y'all. It's Monday morning. I woke up like half excited and having a muscle memory of loving Monday morning. And then I woke up half stressed. So if mom, if you see this, please don't let it stop you from asking us for help. It is the end of February and I have, so this is part personal, part business, like wake up on Monday morning and we have what we call, I'm having right now, what we call a parts party. I also know that it's been a few days. I had a med run out. And so it was one of my hormones. I'm a little extra weepy. The new meds come in today, but I can feel the physical effects and emotional fluctuations because of hormones. And that does not dismiss that there are parts involved. I feel so what I'm going to do is just kind of inventory all the parts that are here after I took that little sigh. I have a part that is tired of doing that coughing hack. I have a part that knows to breathe, and I have a part that, this is a very common part, a part that thinks if I slow down and sink into it, I will fall apart. I will get completely flooded. That is a very common protector part in many systems, something we learn about. But that part is here. I have a lot of knowing and overthinking parts who are kind of trying to boss me around on the inside. And I have parts that are stressed about lighting. I have parts that are thinking of all the right things to do. I have parts that want to disassociate and watch YouTubes on how to do YouTubes instead of making a YouTube. There are certain events that have activated parts. So one is financial. This end of the month, I have this leadership group ending off. It's a big chunk of my recurring revenue falling off. I've had 2 members. I have a coaching membership community that is month to month. And part of having a membership coaching program is what we call churn, right? Like that, the autonomy of if it is no longer a fit for you, or you don't want to spend the money, or it's just not what you want to do right now, then we cancel the membership. So I've had a few of those. So there's like this impending parts that are feeling the financial pressure of you got to get to work. Then I also have parts that come in and say, you know what to do. You know how to do this. You've been doing this for 20 years. Like there are parts that I call them my own your credibility parts. And there are times when my credibility parts are absolutely self-led, which means they're parts, but they're here. And right now they're kind of not self-led. They're like defensive. I have parts that are a little sad because I am about to have this last session with these leadership clients that I just love and adore, and endings are really hard for me. Discomfort is a big challenge for me in many ways. And also somewhere in there, I have a sense of, and it's not just intellectual, a lot of these parts start out as intellectual thinking parts. That's just the way my head-led system is. But there is, like I wrote down in my journal, I do know that everything will be okay. Like this is a familiar feeling as a small business owner. This is a familiar feeling since 2003 of being self-employed. There are familiar feelings of actually overcoming self-doubt and failure. So like self-doubt is kind of a part of the journey. And so right now I'm just inventorying and noticing all these parts. And as like if you could picture in my mind or picture in your own mind, right? Like I'm just sitting in the middle of what I call a parts party. And I'm just noticing who's in the room with me psychologically and in my body. So in my body, I also notice I'm had frozen shoulder for a few years. I'm coming out of it, but now there's pain from being in frozen shoulder for all these years. And I just notice the energy of responsibility in my shoulder. I notice my belly asking for deep breath, which means down into my diaphragm, deeper than my lungs. And as I recognize these parts that are here, and that there is quite a few of them this morning, I'm able to feel, I don't have my pillow around here, I'm able to feel the compassion of my own core self. And as I do this, it's not something I force. For me, and the way my system works is when I slow down and focus. So I'm focusing today by sharing with you. I started out focusing, well, listen, 2 lines in my journal. I did not get through a process, but just with the intention of recognizing the parts that are in the room. I can't say without analyzing, because my analyzing parts are always going on. That's a hypervigilance thing. But just recognizing the parts that are in the room. So financial responsibility, I see you. Financial burden, I see you. And the reason I mentioned my mom earlier is because my sweet daddy really does need to go to nursing care, and he's not going to want to. And it's the next phase of decision with my senior parents. And I went through this in 2022. It's pretty, I have parts that think my situation is different. I think we all have parts that are like, yes, but this. And a couple of years ago, I spent a lot of time supporting my parents as best I could in helping them downsize and sell their house with 52 years of stuff and attachment to stuff in that house. And taking care of my parts while I was doing it. And there's still stuff in the new place. And I've been working on my stuff with the stuff and giving my parents autonomy. And it's time for the big guns. Like there's some decisions that need to be made that are going to go against some of that autonomy, and there's grief involved in that. So I have all those parts that are like, I have other parts that are trying to compartmentalize those parts. And then I have these compassionate parts, and I say lowercase c, but they're like, they're caretaking parts of me and you. And they're like, everybody has all these things. And maybe that's why I wanted to do this morning. Is here we are in whatever circumstances you have. Maybe you're a small business owner. Maybe you're a parent caregiver. And maybe you're dealing with your own health and midlife shifts and changes. And maybe you're dealing with your own inner parts work and trauma work, and maybe you have kids, all this kind of stuff. And then we have the context of politics, which, is on my mind quite a lot. Yeah, so just noticing the parts party. Noticing all the parts that need my attention. Noticing the parts that are demanding my attention. We call those managers, the ones who are trying to manage life. And I feel like there's a lot of parts, protective parts, that have stood up and said, I need your effing attention, woman, to get this shit done. And there is an element of that, of like, without shame, it's a like courageous confidence, self-led sense of like, we can take care of these parts and we can put on our big girl panties, and the adult in us can do the things that we know how to do. And it's so tempting to skip over some of the parts work. And for me right now, right, like here's an example. This is a complete list of the internal family systems model, like all the steps you can go through. And I'm not a linear person, so I don't work this way. But one of the things that helps on a day-to-day basis is this recognition piece and this validation and this. So it's not just cognitive awareness. That doesn't really change anything for me going forward, but I can take the cognitive awareness and I can begin to connect it somatically with my breath, with the compassion that lives in my heart and in my body and in my belly. And I can begin to create attunement with the parts of me that are aware. So creating attunement and connection in the context of noticing that there's a lot of parts going on. And that right there relieves so much of my suffering. And so I let those parts know that I'm here. I don't demand it on them. But part of this visual in my mind of like just sitting in the room and noticing who I'm there, and I'm intent on being calm. And I know for many people, calm is like an activator or a trigger, or it's not their favorite word. That's the first place I have to get, because calm opens the door from my disassociated thinking parts to my body. And so as it's why all my sweatshirts and t-shirts say breathe, y'all. Like the breath is not meant to disassociate. It's a loving reminder that through my breath, I connect my head to my body and my spirit. And so from this calm place, instead of wrangling all my parts, from this calm place, they begin to attune to my calmness. And then knowing right now I have a multitude of parts, I'm kind of tuning in and just saying, is there any one of you that wants to speak? In this moment. My sense is kind of on behalf of the whole, but I don't know. And I'm just noticing. And the speaker, whoever comes forward right now, just says, thank you for noticing and recognizing all of us. That's what we need in the moment. We don't need to be fixed right now. We just needed your recognition and care. And for many of my parts, that's what they didn't get when they were younger. They didn't get the recognition and care. And so for my system, I know not everybody's system is the same. And when I say system in this context, I mean your core self and all your parts in your psyche. But getting that attuned, regulated, care and validation is a giant step for my parts. And I just, in my head, I just kind of poked forward, like, does anybody need, let me know what's next. And they seem to be compassionately aware that I have things on my list to do today. I have some things I need to do. And they are so very grateful that I took this time and space to not only do this work, but to share with you. And most of all, they don't need everything to be better. They just needed my connection in this moment. Notice, none of my challenges are necessarily solved, but my inner being and inner world. So for example, when I kind of tune in, those things are still there. I haven't shoved them in the closet and said I'll deal with them later. But they're not intense they're not showing up in this present moment as overthinking, like intrusive overthinking. So yeah, that's my little parts process today, and I'm going to go get ready for my coaching call.